It's a brand new release from Knob Creek with a serious age statement. Today we're doing a review of Knob Creek 18. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we're taking a look at the brand new release Knob Creek 18 Year. So to be honest with you, this one wasn't on my radar that much. I knew that the label had been created and approved, but I wasn't honestly going out to look for this. Went into the store today and kind of just stumbled across it. So this is a very, very new release. There's actually not that much information out about the bottle other than the label itself. I did a little bit of research, looked at the Knob Creek website, and there's limited information out there. So I'm just gonna go off of what I know from purchasing it and what I have in front of me today. So what I do have in front of me is a beautiful box. You can tell the presentation is really nice here. It says limited edition across the bottom. The bottle itself is like a maroon / burgundy deep color, really nice. I think the whole Knob Creek line looks really, really good. And then this little tag here, it just says honoring the 30th anniversary of Knob Creek. So this is a very limited product, and it's coming out to honor 30 years of distilling and producing bourbon and whiskey, which is great. I'm a big fan of Knob Creek, so I'm excited to dive in. In terms of price and stats on this, I paid right around $160 for this bottle. I don't know exactly what the MSRP is on this, but that's what I paid for it. And I thought that's pretty fair given that it's got a pretty massive age statement on it. So per year, you're paying a pretty good price there. It is a small batch product, so they're gonna take a bunch of barrels and batch them together. I think it was a pretty small number of barrels as well, and it is at 100 proof. So you might be asking yourself, why not release something this limited and special at a super high proof or cask strength? And to be honest with you, the older whiskey gets, you don't need as much proof, and often dialing it back a little bit can provide much better balance. Think of like Elijah Craig 18 Year, which is at 90 proof. This is at 100 proof, which I think bodes well and could be really, really good. And then I just want to read something real quick from the back, because it does say, Knob Creek 18 is unfiltered. We quality screen for barrel char pieces, but the rest we keep intact. It's part of what gives whiskey its strong flavor and refined character. So this is a non-chill filtered product at 100 proof. And like I said, price was right around $160 for me. All right, all of that being said, I think the major question here is, how much oak is this gonna have on it? I've heard a lot about the Knob Creek 15, which I've never tried, having excessive amounts of oak for a lot of people. So that gets me a little bit worried about 18 being too much, but we're gonna dive in here and see and evaluate the nose, palate, and finish. So I'm gonna open up the box here. This is gonna be a fresh crack. This is probably a whiskey that's gonna need some time to open up as well, but I was so excited to get it and wanted to share it with you guys. So as I open this up, I do just wanna ask that if you're liking all the content coming out of the channel, that you hit that like button and that you hit the subscribe button. We're over 500 now, which blows me away. And we're trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. And we're gonna do a fun giveaway once we get to that point. So if you haven't already, hit that big red button. All right, pretty solid. And the first pour, everybody. All right, everybody, we're set up now. We've got the whiskey poured out. We've got the bottle back in its box. Let's dive into this brand new release. So on the nose, a hefty amount of oak right off the bat, but good sweet oak and vanilla, lots of vanilla. Some spiciness in there. So the bottle itself does say that it's like a full-bodied caramelized oak with baking spices kind of experience. And I do think that that's coming through. Good amount of vanilla and caramel. And then this it's a little bit fresher than I was expecting, fruitier, just a nice bright red cherry or strawberry or something like that. Maybe it's a raspberry, but like a bright red fruit coming through. But then just nice, rich caramel, vanilla, and oak too. And baking spices. So I mean, pretty much what you would expect from an older whiskey and something with some heft to it. but really, really nice and inviting and not at all tannic on the nose and not at all musty, really. It's more just bright and fruity and sweet and rich. So excited to taste it now, everybody. Let's go in for the first sip. Cheers. Okay, wow. The oak on that is beautiful. Really, really nice. I mean, it is barrel, spice, and oak. Maybe a little bit of like tobacco too, just from the age. It's got a slight drying effect in the mouth, so not overwhelmingly so, but a little bit drying. But man, that burst of oak that you get on the front and mid palate is like spectacular. Just super rich, sweet, and spicy all at the same time. Then there's good caramel and vanilla too. And man, does that oak linger for a long time on the palate. I know I'm saying oak a lot. I just feel like I'm expecting that, and that's the dominant note for sure right now. But there's balance there too with the caramel and vanilla. A little bit less of the fruit on the palate than I was getting on the nose. So let's see if we can pick that out as we go in for another sip here. Cheers. Okay, so not really much red fruit on that again, but what did kind of emerge there was a nice, like creamy peanut butter kind of note. A lot of times for Jim Beam and Knob Creek, I get a little bit of peanut, and that had really good vanilla and peanut butter along with that sweet and spicy oak and caramel that is just really, really rich. Overall, it's also pretty easy sipping. I mean, at 100 proof, I'm not expecting it to knock me over or anything like that, but it's kind of a blooming, well-rounded experience that as you take it in, it's not gonna knock your socks off in terms of proof, but I think it's sitting at a good balance point with that. So really, really nice. Let's go back to the nose now since it's had a little bit more time to open up and we got some on our palate. Yeah, the amount of oak and vanilla and caramel on it is really, really nice, and the nose is powerful because of that. And then baking spices too, and I will say the baking spice, barrel spice part comes through on the palate too. All right, I'm really interested in the finish here because I feel like that's something that you really want to evaluate with extra aged stuff. So let's get into the final sip here and evaluate the finish. Cheers, everybody. Yeah, okay, so I'd call the finish very long, like long enough that I can sit here between sips for 2-3 minutes maybe and just continue to feel that simmering heat, kind of like a cinnamon baking spice heat with a still heaping of oak. Good caramelized oak though. They hit that spot on where it's not this oak that is like tannic and bitter. It's sweet oak and caramelized oak and sort of fresh and really, really nice. Not at all intimidating, I don't think, for the palate, and a pretty good balance point. But overall, I mean, it lingers on the palate for a long time. The mouthfeel is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's the most exceptional in the world, but the fact that the flavors stick around and that oak and that heat stick around for a while is, I mean, I'm gonna give that a big thumbs up for sure. So, what are my overall thoughts on Knob Creek 18 year? Gotta say, I think the big concern was that it would be too oaky, and I'm not finding that at all. I think the oak is beautiful and the absolute star of the show here. In a way, it's like you get this bourbon because you want a beautiful oak and caramel and a little bit of baking spice experience. That being said, I do not think it's the most complex thing ever. I think it's actually pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. It's running high on oak and caramel and vanilla. I talked about that little bit of peanut butteriness too, and some baking spices. So it's a very traditional, rich, darker, heftier bourbon, but it is not super complex. A little bit of red fruit on the nose, but that didn't necessarily transfer over to the palate for me. Now, I do think this is one case where I have to let this bottle open up and get some more oxygen in it so that it'll have more complexity, but the first pour here was pretty straightforward. But overall, that oak, really, really spectacular. I will say, if you're not a huge fan of oak, this is probably not going to be up your alley and probably not worth the buy. But if you do like a traditional hefty oaky bourbon, I mean, this is going to be exactly what you're looking for. And last thing I will say is just kudos to Knob Creek. First, for just having great age statements in an era where that's not that common. And second, for coming out with an 18-year-old product where you got to really watch that. You got to be careful that you don't over oak it. And I think they did a great job finding balance here. So big kudos to them. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up here today. Let me know in the comments below if this is a bottle you're particularly looking for and excited about. Have you seen it on shelves near you yet? I was super glad to be able to get a bottle and see it today and wanted to share it with you guys. And I think it's a huge hit. So until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.